Good afternoon. My name is Diane Salman, and I am a learning designer at SALT. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Mishka, who is also a learning designer, and my colleague Max, as well as my colleague Nadine, who is just here to support us. We're very, very grateful for your time, and thank you for being with us. Our agenda today will be a discussion on the Enable framework. We'll just have a little chit chat on what that's about. We'll also talk about the pre-course survey and the Wooclap and Padlet external tools, which are integrated into our current Amatuba learning management system. Okay, so our aims for our workshop today is we just want to understand where we would like for you to understand your students better using our inclusive learning design framework, which is, as I mentioned, Enable, the Enabling Accessible Blended Learning for Equity framework. The hope, of course, is for clear and confident explanation, the value of knowing our students. This is for you and for us. Then learning how the external tools, our Padlet and our Wooclap, as well as the pre-course survey that I will introduce you to, how those facilitate your ability to know your students better. Okay, so in terms of Enable itself, the framework brings into conversation the principles of UDL, which some of you may have heard of. It is the Universal Design for Learning, and specifically the CAST guidelines, which speak to the Universal Design for Learning, with curriculum and learning design processes for both, of course, our in-person learning and teaching and online learning in the tertiary education environment. So these aforementioned, these aforementioned guidelines would include engagement, which includes here, or which focuses rather on learning options that recruit student interest, their effort, their self-regulation. It also includes representation, which does consider options, learning options, or how students perceive visual information. And this includes things like symbols and comprehending these as well as language. And lastly, action and expression, which does focus on executive function and how students express themselves and how they communicate. Okay. So the Enable framework is indeed an output of the Redesigning Blended Courses project, which is strategically aligned to UCT's Vision 2030. And basically it aims to assist the institution's teaching and learning community with developing learning pathways that effectively integrate a blended learning mode. So this is, of course, our online and our in-person teaching. We also, with our Enable framework, wish to promote inclusive digitally enabled learning for all. So this is, of course, students with, all types of students. So students with neurodivergencies, students with any kinds of disabilities or accessibility issues, considering all such students. And ultimately, we would like for this to let you know that this document itself does include links and chapters, which will be an open educational resource, meaning that anyone can access it and access the links and adapt it as you wish. So as I mentioned, our framework aims to promote inclusive, digitally enabled learning for everyone, all of our students, with, of course, a strong focus on the blended learning mode, and, of course, to assist our lecturers on how to ensure equity for our students. The framework itself is split into 6 categories, and these categories cover the theoretical instruction and tools-based instruction. And these are what you see now on the screen. So our materials and technology, our evaluation, which does include creating a lovely student profile, which we often encourage. It's a very, very useful tool. Assessment is a very big issue. So we've got a lot of we've got several topics under that, which also include evaluation. under our teaching as well. We've got our discussions, collaboration, all of that, learning, and of course, our outcomes. And again, as I mentioned, there are links that you are able to use. We will be providing these at the end of this presentation for your use. Okay. Thank you, and I will hand over to Mishka.
Cool. Thank you so much, Dara. So what I want you to do now is just take a pause, and there's a lot of information to take in. Take a pause, and I want you to, throughout the session, think about what you want to know about your students. What would be useful for you and your teaching, the courses that you're teaching and your disciplines to know about your students, and what tools or strategies you could use to learn more about them. So I'm not going to ask you to answer that question right now, but as we work through the presentation, this is the question that I want you to come back to so that you can seek to apply what we discuss in this session for yourself. Okay, so just making that note. If you need to grab a pen and a piece of paper, you can do so. I'll give you a few seconds and then I will continue on. Okay. So I think part of the what and the why of Enable is to ask this question: why is knowing your students important? Well, it's important to understand your students' diverse backgrounds. If we are to enact what Enable seeks to do, which is to design for all, it's important to understand who composes that all. It's not a monolith, right? So it's useful to understand your students' diverse backgrounds, to be able to acknowledge their unique experiences and needs. This might allow you to pivot if necessary or in the process of designing. It's also really important to learn what knowledge and skills and values your students already possess. We don't want our students to leave themselves at the door, but rather to be invited into the learning process. And it's also helpful for enhancing the learning experience and optimizing student engagement. All of these facets work well together. And all of this is premised on student-centered learning. This is an approach to education that shifts the focus from the preference of the teaching staff to the needs of the student. What's involved in this is autonomy and individualization, that is allowing students to develop their own autonomy, placing responsibilities on the students for their own learning. Active learning, which is about students participating in their learning journeys, and fostering collaboration, which is about getting students to work together in their course or disciplinary communities. And all of this, which summarizes student-centered learning, really is at the heart of UDL. So what we've just covered now is the what and the why, and what we want to do now is shift into the how. So the next section of this presentation is to look at tools for facilitating getting to know your students better. And with that, I hand back to Dai.
Thank you so much, Mishka. Okay, so an important part of, I think, trying to get to know your students is obviously asking the right questions. So that would include, kind of getting on it, thinking maybe on your own what your idea of your students, the student taking your course would be, or who the student taking your course would be, and then jotting down some questions that relate to that student or the things that you would want to know about that student who would be taking your course. As I said, we will be sharing these presentation slides, and this is a link here that does have some example questions that you can use, but I will be showing you right now an example of a pre-course survey that we created. And the idea about the survey is basically that once it's been created, it would then be embedded into the course for students to take this survey. Okay. Thank you, Mishka. I was about to share. Thank you. No problem. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got this survey particularly starts off with asking what languages certain students speak. This can obviously be very useful in, understanding, a student's ability to read or write, or like why they're having difficulties with understanding certain documents that you're sharing, and how you can then step in and assist, either by, for example, sending them to the writing center, etc. We've also got other questions here. Why would you like to take this course? Depending, of course, on your course, you can adapt these questions based on whatever course you are teaching. So if you are teaching, for example, a social work course or a social development course, you can ask questions that directly relate to the content that you teach. So here you'll see it says, what is your background in the subject? These are things that you may want to know. Describe your learning environment at home. We do know that students are back on campus, but for those who aren't, and obviously we have to consider things like load shedding and all of that. So these are sort of the kinds of things that you might want to figure out with your students, again, so that you can have a plan in mind to mitigate or to make it as painless as possible to take your course online. It's also important here, you'll notice we've got a rate your digital skills section. It's also important to know how capable your students are of using tech. So if you are using particular software, for example, things like in Vivo, if your students are taking a radio production course and they need to know Adobe software, these are the kinds of questions that you would need to ask. What is their level of understanding of that tech, and how can you help them get the help that they need to learn this tech? So either providing links to where they can freely learn, if it's things like coding, again, providing help there prior to you even getting into the learning aspect of things. Another important thing would be really thinking about your assessment strategies. We do know that for certain courses, for example, students may not necessarily enjoy doing group projects, especially big or large ones. But depending on the course, and again here I'll use the example of a social work course. If your students are going to need to learn to work with people, group work becomes a very important part of it. So having a pre-course survey tells you how many are in favor and how many are not really keen on the group work aspect. And it does then allow you to later come back with feedback and explain to your students why it's necessary for them to do the group work. So if you're not going to change it, then you would need to sort of feed that back to them, which makes them feel heard and makes them feel cared for. And obviously for other things that can be changed, it gives you the opportunity ahead of time before you get into the classroom and fully teaching to then pivot and adapt. So yeah, these are just a few of the questions that we've put here and that you are welcome again to go through. This is an MS Forms. The other way to do this would also be to do it in the form of Google Forms, because these are both able to be embedded within an AmbaTuba course. I hope this was very helpful. Please, at any point, do stop us. You can raise your hand or just simply unmute and ask any questions if you do have questions. We'll put them in the chat. All right, I'll hand over to you, Mishka, to speak about Wooclap, a very exciting external tool.
Cool, thank you, Dad. So yeah, I think also what I really want to drive home, and we hope becomes clear in the session, is that all tools are not the be all and end all, that you need to do something with it. So in the case of the pre-course survey, as Di very rightly mentioned, you have to take that data and make sense of it and then enact. So if something comes up within that data that says that students need assistance with a particular thing, or that will help you mold or think through how you want to structure the rest of the semester. It also allows for opportunities to reflect again at different checkpoints. And another key thing to mention is that it's wonderful to be able to get this information for yourself, but it would be even better to share that information with the students themselves as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just, sorry, Mishka, I meant to mention this, so I'll just add it here. I think it's also very important for teaching teams to remember that when we are thinking about really and truly being inclusive in a course, we do need to consider everybody. So doing something like this would, depending on, of course, the types of questions that you ask. If you have, for example, students that are going through mental health issues, these are not things that you will know off the bat just by looking at them. So if you did a course, a survey such as this, it was done anonymously, and students are free to just, give their input in response to whatever questions you've asked. You are then able, when you are feeding back, to redirect them to the places where they can get help and support. So things like your student wellness services, things like the 24-hour counseling contact that we have at UCT, things like the suicide line. You are then able to give them that sort of information well ahead of you getting into the course, which is very, very useful. Even things like financial aid, or, these are all the sorts of things that could be interesting to know ahead of time. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Di. So yeah, the pre-course survey using Google Forms, using MS Forms is a great tool. Another option would be Wooclap. I really like Wooclap, and I think that its unique selling point is that you can collect data about students, so you could get to know students live, and in that same session, get that feedback and also share that feedback with the entire class. So that's the unique selling point of Wooclap. That's what makes it different to the pre-course survey. It also promotes this interactive learning because of that live component. So you in your session, in your class, you could pose a question to the students and they can respond to that question. It can be getting to know them types of questions. It can be questions on content. And there is also an option, although this is not the main purpose of this tool, it is able to be used asynchronously, so as a out of class task. And this is useful, if you're setting up lessons pages on Vula or content HTML pages on Amatuba, and you want to embed some formative assessment. So it can be used in both ways. It integrates, as I said, well with Amatuba and Vula, but it also integrates with MS Teams and Zoom. You can also integrate it into PowerPoint and Google Slides, and doesn't require the student to download anything because it's a website, which is quite useful. So I think to make this come alive, I want to do a Wooclap activity with everybody here. So I'm going to ask you to take out your cell phones, and I will show you a QR code on the screen, and you can either scan this QR code with your cell phone, or if that's not working, you can go to wooclap.com and it will ask you for an event code. And the event code for our event is FRXKTM. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. Oops. FRXKTM. FRXKTM. Okay. I'm going to toggle over to Wooclap. And I can see that there's 7 people, so I'll just wait a few more seconds in case anybody else is trying to log in on their phones. There we go, that's 8. Wonderful. So this is what you would do in class. You would set up a Wooclap event. You would show the screen on the projector. Students would either sign up using the QR code or go to wooclap.com and enter the event code, either or, and it will take them to the space. And then you bring up the first question. So our first question for today is, are you familiar with Wooclap? So you vote yes, I have used it before, or kind of, I used it a long time ago, I've only used it once, or no, I have never used it and I don't feel confident using it. Okay, that's 6, that's 7. We're waiting for 2 more votes to come in, but we're currently with no, I've never used it before and I don't feel confident. Okay. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. Okay, so here's an image. I want you to point to your mood today. So select one of these characters that denotes what you, or connotes what you feel like today. You click anywhere on the screen. You've got somebody here, got somebody over here. That's great. You're working hard. Someone's falling over. I'm so sorry about that. There's a lot of people in dire situations. Cool. Okay. Wonderful. 2 people working really hard. 1 person flying. That's amazing. Oh no, I got another vote for somebody who's just been struck down somehow. Okay, cool. Here's another way you can use Wooclap. Oh, there's somebody walking a tightrope. I think I resonate with that one the most. Okay, so here's another fun one. If you can, if you feel comfortable, present a picture of what you see outside your window. You'll see in the voting block, there's a camera icon. If you click on that camera, it will open up your camera on your phone and you'll be able to show us what you see outside your window right now. This takes a bit of time because it's gonna, oh, wow, that's stunning. Take some coordination. Lovely. See 2 people on campus. That's definitely UCT vines, I see. Okay. And let's go to the chat. Oh no, lost the page. I will show the QR code just for 1 moment again, Tracy, so that you can get back to us. There you go. If anybody lost the page, here is the QR code and the event code. You get logged in again. Yep, cool. We won't go through the motions of all these other ones, but I just wanted to show you that you can do different things. You can make word clouds, you can ask for long form responses, you can show pictures and have students select aspects of the image, you can ask students to upload an image, and it takes all these different forms. And these other questions, I'll just leave you with them. You know, what words do you think of when you hear the term student-centered learning? And finally, why is knowing your students important for you? Yeah. And so I also wanted to show you what Wooclap looks like in context of the learning management system. So if you wanted to integrate or use Wooclap outside of the live session, and you wanted students as part of their homework, or if you were doing a flipped classroom model to do some pre-reading and thinking, you could embed a Wooclap quiz inside an HTML page, and I'll show you what that looks like. I can get to it. There we go. And so what we just did now was live voting, but as I said, you can also embed it into your HTML page. So a similar question to the one that Di introduced in the pre-course survey: what languages do you most commonly use at home? Students can fill this in, and it will show up over here. And on your side, you will also see the results. I just wanted to note 3 things. So I had mentioned that we can use Wooclap both live in the classroom for live voting. You can use it asynchronously. So if it's an out-of-class task like the one that I'm showing you right now. You can also toggle on different settings. So if you're doing live voting, you can toggle the I'm confused button, so students can indicate that, so that you know that there's students, 1 or 2 students or several students who are confused about the task, and you know that you need to go over that part of the work again. And all question types are accessible through Wooclap. So multiple choice, find on an image, everything that we just did in today's session is available through Wooclap. You can export results, so you have those reports with you. And there are different methods for exporting votes and the asynchronistic participant paste questions. All of this information will be included in the Wooclap guide, which we will link at the end of this presentation and also share with you. Okay, that's it for Wooclap. Over to you, Di, to talk about Padlet.
Thank you so much, Mishka. Yeah, Wooclap is quite exciting. I think it brings the classroom alive nicely. All right, so the next tool we'll be discussing is the Padlet tool, which, like Wooclap, is also, it's external to Amatuba, but it is integrated into the platform. It is a virtual board where content can be created and shared with others on a virtual bulletin board, and these virtual bulletin boards are called Padlets. Okay, so you're able to post ideas, notes, you're able to use images, video, audio clips, you can use GIFs even. So it's quite similar to social media in that sense. It is very easy and intuitive to use, and it is available on not only your computers, but also on mobile devices. This obviously includes your tablets and your phones. It can be embedded into websites, as I mentioned. It is in Amatuba at the moment. It does allow for commenting, for liking, for upvoting, which we encourage only the upvote and not the downvote. Grading can be enabled to give additional feedback. It supports various levels of privacy, so you can make posts anonymous, or if you would like to see the students' names, you can leave that functionality unchecked. Padlets are really great when you're doing low-stakes interactive tasks. So things like your check-ins, we will get into this now when I go into sharing my Amatuba screen. It isn't a place where you create tasks where everyone could provide the same answer. So that's also something to think about when you create these. And the other thing to consider would also be that it isn't entirely data, it does impact your data. So that's a consideration to make. So if there are lots of large videos or lots of large images, that could be something that you would need to think about. All right, Mishka, if you want to stop sharing, and I'll go into the Amatuba page. Okay, so one of the first things you would do, of course, would be to log in. As Mishka mentioned, we will have the resources linked at the end of the PowerPoint slide, so you will be able to see the guide on how to navigate your way into creating a Padlet for yourself. But one of the ways in which Padlet can be used is for your introductions. If you have particularly smaller class groups, it's quite a nice way to do it. And this is kind of just an introductory page for a Padlet activity where students are introducing themselves. So you'd have an HTML page maybe that kind of just gives them a little bit of a guideline on what's about to happen. And then you would then have your introductory activity itself embedded below that page. Okay, so you can see here we've created a Padlet. This is a Padlet that's embedded within Amatuba, and it has been populated. This one is not anonymous, so you can see my name at the top, but these would be various students, student names if you wanted to know who they were, and it would just say anonymous if you had unchecked that facility. Okay, so you notice these use GIFs and images as well. And I have also included some text at the top, asking a few questions for them to respond to in their posts. Okay, the other way that you could then use your Padlet would be as some sort of discussion space. Okay, so you want to encourage your critical thinking amongst your students. You want them each to contribute their own ideas here. This would be a great co-learning space or way for students to learn from each other. It will also teach them to engage in an academic environment in a friendly manner. And obviously, it's always nice to give some guidelines on doing that. This is an example of a discussion space the discussion space within Amatuba. This was a climate change group discussion space. So the instruction here was to watch the documentary and to kind of write a little post about it. And that's how this was used. Okay. So the next way that you could use a Padlet would be as your Q&A section and for your check-ins. So because we do not have in Amatuba the chat functionality that used to exist in Vula, this is a great way to do it. It's a more exciting way to do it than simply using, say, the discussion tools. Okay, so creating a nice Q&A space where your students can pop in and just ask questions. Obviously, you need to be clear about when they can expect responses in the top of your description. And then you could also use the space, as we said, for your check-ins, which we strongly encourage doing some either mid-term check-ins or mid-course check-ins, just to kind of figure out how your students are doing. And again, for you to then pivot and adjust accordingly based on the responses that you receive in said check-ins. Okay, so as a Q&A space, this is just a quick one to give you an idea where my name is here. This would be your name as the lecturer or the part of the teaching staff, whoever's created it. And it just tells them what the space is for. And it also says allow 48 hours to receive a response. So you notice here, people can put in their questions. And I've just done it in different languages just to show as well that if you are teaching a language course, for example, you could use it, even as a space for them to just practice their writing and talk to each other in their different languages. Okay. I think I had one more example, which was our check-in activity. Can you still see my screen with the check-in activity?
Yes, Di.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, very important to kind of gauge where your students are at as you go through your course. So asking some questions that are prescient for you to get some answers. All right, sorry, let me just get back to my space. Okay, and the final example here would be this person used it as a space to do book reviews. So because Padlet does offer different themes, depending on the theme that you pick, you could also use it as a space to engage in such kind of activities. Thank you, Mishka. We'll stop sharing.
Cool, thank you, Di. Before we move on to the next part, I just want to check if there are any questions. Casey, yes, your camera's on. Do you have any questions?
No, sorry, my screen froze, so I had to log out and log back in.
Oh, no.
Sorry, so I lost the whole section. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Okay. Our very last section is the Padlet activity. Shall I share my screen, Di?
If you would like to, yes, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Share. Okay, so earlier I'd asked you to think about two questions. One is, what questions would you ask to understand your students better? So what types of questions that are relevant to your discipline or your course? And what tools or methods are you interested in trying out to learn more about your students? And we've just spent the session together today to introducing you to three. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is actually fill in the Padlet. And Di, will you assist by posting that in the chat?
It's already there.
Amazing. Perfect.
Please let us know if you are unable for whatever reason to get in. But this is also a great example of the way that you could, if you were using a Padlet or creating a Padlet, this is the kind of thing that you would do, just making sure that you have a little bit of instructional text for your students. Okay.
Cool. And for those that have not used Padlet before, as Di mentioned, there's a green plus in the bottom right-hand corner. If you click on that, it'll open up a window like this, and this is where you can write your content that you want to post.
So Mishka, for this one, they don't necessarily have to do that. You can, because there is no wrong here. It's perfectly fine. However, I've also put the instruction within just under, if you look beneath the question, I've also said to respond, you can just click on the add comment, or you can click the plus sign above the question. So either way, or the plus sign that Mishka showed, it all works.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got some things coming up. What their hobbies are, what drives their creativity. I really love that one. Home language, yeah, super important. What activities do they enjoy the most? Someone's interested in using Wooclap. What are your goals for studying your degree? Yeah, that's really wonderful. Helping them identify, yeah, their motivations. How they can learn the best. Yeah, so you can know what types of modalities to include. And the best is always to offer a range of modalities: videos, audio, images, text. What are their expectations? This is great because it's wonderful at the start of the course to be able to determine what their expectations are and to temper that if needs be, or to affirm that through the course outline, course outcomes, and throughout the course itself. Cool. So you'll have access to this Padlet. Please keep populating it. And while you are populating it, I just want to see if there are any questions that people have about these tools or about Enable that we can answer for you. Okay, I'll take silence as no questions. I see one more question. One more post came through. Did they have access to the library when they were at school? That's a great question. Cool. Wooclap, Padlet, wonderful. Great. Surveys. So all three, that's wonderful. We really are keen to see how you make use of these tools. So if you do go away and decide to use any of these things, please get in touch. Tell us about it. We love hearing case studies about how these tools get used. I'll keep the Padlet open, but I'm going to go back to the presentation just to end off if there aren't any questions in the chat, any burning questions, and you want to unmute yourself. But just to say that everything that we covered in this workshop today, so the overview of the Enable framework that I contextualized for us, resources on the student profile survey, so that template of the MS forms that you saw, student-centered learning theories and resources on how to use Padlet, resources on how to use Wooclap. These are all linked in this presentation. And after the presentation, we'll be sure to share this presentation itself, which will have all these links embedded within. And you can make use of it in any way that you wish. If you have an idea for how to use these tools and you'd like to have a consultation, you can reach out to us through to set up a consultation with a learning designer. Or as I said, if you end up using any of these tools and you want to share your case study with us, we'd love to hear from you. And then other than that, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today, and that there are several other workshops that will be happening around the Enable framework throughout this week. So if you haven't signed up yet, please go ahead and sign up. And that's it from me, Mishka, and from Dai. Thanks so much, everybody.